writing coach, John Claude Bemis, here to help you with generating amazing ideas for stories. Today, we're going to look at how rules and limitations can enhance creative thinking. Yes, sometimes less can be more. In fact, sometimes the less you have to work with, the farther your imagination can reach. Before it was a movie classic, The Wizard of Oz was a book by the American author L. Frank Baum. Baum envisioned his story as a distinctly American fairy tale, which resonated with me as a young writer who wanted to write a distinctly American fantasy epic with my first novel, The 9-Pound Hammer. We all know today that Dorothy's three companions in The Wizard of Oz are the Scarecrow, the Cowardly Lion, and the Tin Man. But as someone who is interested in the origins of creative ideas, I was fascinated to learn how Baum came up with these three companions. Baum gave himself a limitation. You might think it would be the heart, brains, and courage, but it wasn't. He decided that the three companions had to be based on the ancient categorization of animal, vegetable, and mineral. The animal is obvious with the Cowardly Lion. The other two are more interesting, and really quite unusual when you think about it. For the vegetable, Baum chose the Scarecrow. He lived in South Dakota, on the prairie, in that frontier age of American history, and saw a lot of scarecrows around him. It fit his creative limitation of a vegetable, as a being made of corn husks and straw. The companion based on a mineral was more challenging. But interestingly, when Baum was living in South Dakota, he made a window display for his local hardware store. He made a mannequin out of pots and pans. The experience always stuck in his imagination. Later, while living in Chicago and writing The Wizard of Oz, and needing a character to fit the creative limitation he'd given himself, Baum decided that Dorothy's mineral companion would be based on that pots and pans mannequin. He combined it with images of those Paul Bunyan lumberjacks of that era and invented the Tin Woodman. The American architect, Frank Lloyd Wright, famously said, "An artist's limitations are his best friends." This might not seem right to you at first. You might think, isn't being wildly creative having no rules, just letting your imagination off the leash to run wild? Well, let's test that theory. Which writing prompt activates your imagination more? A prompt like, write a story about anything you want, or write a story about an identical twin who works as a waiter in a restaurant frequented by mobsters, and he suffers from uncontrollable sneezing fits. Doesn't that second prompt with the limitations ignite possibilities? This is the interesting thing about this aspect of creativity. Having limiting factors and restrictions gives the imagination something to play with. It's like having rules to a game. The game is a lot more fun with rules than when there are no rules. When I was writing a book called The Prince Who Fell from the Sky, I wanted the main characters to all be animals. I loved animal stories, like Watership Down and Mrs. Frisbee and the Rats and Nim. But the animals in my story lived in a future Earth where humans have long disappeared. When the main character, a bear, and a rat named Dumpster, meet a real human boy, they have to decide whether he's a danger to their world or, as a cub, should he be protected from the wolves who rule the forest. The limitation I gave myself in that book was that the animals can all talk to each other, but the human boy is like an animal to them. He makes noises, grunts, and barks, but they don't understand his language, and the reader doesn't either. It was a tough limitation, not being able to reveal the boy's name or anything that he says. It made it hard to express what that human boy felt, needed, wanted. but the difficulty of having to express that through his actions, physical responses, was a fun creative challenge. When you give yourself a creative challenge, a limitation, a set of rules that you have to follow, you push yourself to create something with your story and your art that's more playful, more inspired, more fun. So let me give you some activities to try. Write a weird version of an ABC book. Try telling a story in reverse chronologies, starting at the end with each scene telling what came before until you end with the beginning. Retell a fairy tale or a classic story. Write a story entirely in tweets or text messages. Write a story with 7 characters, each based on a different day of the week. What are some other ideas you have for fun writing activities with limitations? Share them in the comments below to support other writers. I hope this video sparked some ideas for you about how to be more creative. Thanks for joining me here today. Leave me a message in the comments below, or you can find me on social media at Facebook and Instagram. Want to find out more about how I support writers through school visits, workshop presentations, manuscript critiques? Well, head over to my website, johnclaudebemis.com. Go dream what only you can dream, and go write the story that only you could possibly write. See you next time.